On January 30th at 11:15 p.m., a tragic incident unfolded at a dump truck repair company when an employee was attempting a routine task, using an acetylene torch to cut a metal tank for scrap. Unexpectedly, the torch ignited an unknown substance within the tank, and the pressurized contents caused a massive and immediate explosion. The workers suffered fatal third-degree burns from the blast. OSHA's investigation revealed several serious violations of federal welding and cutting safety requirements. Crucially, the employer had not provided the worker with adequate safety training before authorizing them to use the acetylene torch. OSHA standards require mandatory safety training to ensure that workers are fully aware of the specific hazards and correct techniques associated with torch cutting, especially for tasks involving explosive fuel or enclosed spaces. Additionally, OSHA found that the employer had failed to ensure that the tank had been thoroughly cleaned and confirmed to be free of any flammable residues before allowing the worker to begin cutting it with a torch. OSHA standards explicitly require all containers to be inspected and cleaned of any combustible materials prior to hot work, since residual flammable substances can easily ignite during cutting operations. The lack of such preparation in this case led directly to the tank's explosion and, by extension, the worker's death. Further investigation uncovered that the employer had not conducted or certified a written hazard assessment of the worksite. This step is critical for identifying any potential dangers, such as those posed by residual flammable materials, when employees are using mechanical tools and welding equipment in high-risk environments. Lastly, the employer had failed to provide properly inspected and maintained fire extinguishers for employees engaged in welding and cutting work. Having accessible, well-maintained fire extinguishers is essential to swiftly manage accidental fires, especially when using highly flammable substances like acetylene. This incident serves as a stark reminder of the importance of following all of OSHA's safety requirements for welding and cutting operations. Providing comprehensive safety training, conducting thorough hazard assessments, and preparing work surfaces and tools properly are all crucial measures to prevent similar tragic accidents. On the afternoon of July 31st, an employee at a manufacturing facility was working inside a hopper, welding in a new liner using portable welding device. After finishing a portion of their work, the employee decided to take a short break at around 4:30 p.m. The worker removed their insulating gloves and welding shield to climb out of the hopper, unaware of the danger this decision posed to their personal safety. As the employee gripped the lip of the hopper with one hand and rested their other hand on the top of the still energized welding machine, they suffered an immediate and fatal electrical shock. Following the incident, OSHA's investigation uncovered several critical safety violations at the facility that increased workers' risk of electrocution and other hazards. The employer had not provided adequate mechanical ventilation inside the hopper, where the welding work was being performed. OSHA safety and health standards require proper ventilation to disperse welding fumes and minimize respiratory hazards to workers in confined spaces. Additionally, OSHA found that the ground connections on the portable welding machine had not been inspected for safety. Ground connections are essential to prevent electrical shock, and OSHA requires regular inspections to ensure they remain intact. In this case, the employer's oversight exposed workers to serious electrical hazards. The investigation also revealed that the welding machine's power plug was improperly connected at the time of the worker's death, further increasing the risk of shock. Alongside this issue, the welder's flexible cord was not fitted with proper strain relief, causing stress on electrical joints and connections, which can lead to failure and increase workers' risk of electrocution. This tragic event underscores the importance of OSHA's requirements for electrical safety in welding operations. Comprehensive safety measures like proper ventilation, rigorous equipment inspections, secure power connections, and strain relief on cords are vital for preventing electrocution and ensuring that workers conduct welding operations in the safest manner possible. On the morning of July 29, two workers at an oilfield construction company were welding piping on a catwalk that connected two saltwater disposal tanks. Shortly after the workday began, an explosion tore through the worksite, resulting in severe injuries to 7 employees. 6 of these workers were hospitalized with severe burns, and tragically, one of the injured employees succumbed to their injuries 6 days later. OSHA's investigation of the incident revealed a series of critical safety violations that underscored the company's failure to protect workers from welding hazards in high-risk environments. One key finding was the lack of proper safety training on the job site. OSHA discovered that the employer had failed to educate workers on avoiding unsafe conditions and understanding the regulations that apply to handling flammable materials like natural gas condensate, toluene, hydrogen sulfide, and benzene. When performing such high-risk operations, adequate safety training is critical to ensure that workers are aware of any volatile substances on the worksite, as well as the correct protocols for safely managing these materials. OSHA's investigation also revealed that the employer failed to provide immediate medical attention for workers in the aftermath of the explosion. In such dangerous environments, OSHA requires employers to ensure ready access to rapid medical support in the event of an emergency. Unfortunately, medical support was not readily available to workers in this case, delaying the injured employee's access to emergency treatment. Furthermore, OSHA found that the company failed to provide fall protection for employees who were positioned more than 14 feet above ground on an aerial lift while working on the catwalk. Proper fall protection is required to prevent injuries from elevated workspaces, especially in combination with high-risk activities like welding. Most troubling, however, was the employer's willful negligence in not ensuring the tanks were thoroughly cleaned, flushed, or filled with water before welding work began. OSHA requires these precautions to prevent explosive vapors from accumulating in enclosed spaces during hot work operations. This tragic explosion emphasizes the necessity of adhering to OSHA's welding and cutting safety standards on construction sites. Comprehensive safety training, fall protection, accessible medical support, and thoroughly cleaning or filling tanks that may contain explosive materials are all crucial practices for ensuring workers' protection and preventing similar deadly accidents in the construction industry. On September 4 at 3 p.m., an employee at a salvage yard was conducting routine defueling of vehicle gasoline tanks when disaster struck. Flammable gasoline vapors from the defueling area collected near the ground surface, where torch cutting operations were taking place nearby. The sparks from the torch ignited the vapors, resulting in a sudden explosion that tragically claimed the worker's life. OSHA's investigation of the incident identified several federal safety violations, underscoring critical gaps in the employer's fire protection measures. First, OSHA requires all fire hazards to be removed from areas where work like torch cutting may generate sparks. In this case, the employer failed to ensure the work area was free from such hazards, exposing employees to a highly combustible environment. OSHA also found that the employer allowed torch cutting in an area where gasoline vapors were present, a clear violation of safety standards for work performed near flammable vapors. This decision greatly increased the likelihood of ignition and highlighted the employer's lack of adequate safety planning. The investigation also revealed that the employer had not relocated combustible materials to a safe distance of at least 35 feet from the work site. Instead, the worker who died had been defueling vehicle gas tanks near torch cutting operations, creating an environment ripe for fire and explosion. Additionally, the employer's failure to conduct a thorough hazard assessment was another significant oversight. Employers must perform hazard assessments before authorizing any work involving fuel handling and work that may generate heat or sparks, yet in this case, no such assessment was conducted. Lastly, oxygen cylinders were being stored near highly combustible fuel gas cylinders, a proximity that heightens the risk of explosive reactions. This tragic incident underscores the vital importance of following OSHA's fire protection guidelines, especially in high-risk operations involving flammable materials. Regular hazard assessments, strict control of combustible materials, and safe storage of fuel sources are essential to preventing such devastating workplace accidents. On the afternoon of September 20th, a routine tank cleaning task at a pest control company became a tragic reminder of the importance of proper fire protection and emergency retrieval measures. At 2 p.m., an employee was tasked with draining residual brine water from an 8-foot deep, 10,000-gallon fiberglass tank previously used to store gasoline. However, after entering the tank, the worker began operating a power drill, which caused sparks that ignited lingering gasoline fumes. The explosion that followed completely engulfed the worker, fatally burning them. OSHA's investigation revealed that the incident stemmed from a series of critical oversights in fire protection and confined space safety protocols. Chief among these was the absence of a forced air ventilation system, which could have removed the hazardous fumes before work began. The employer also failed to perform the required atmospheric testing to confirm that the environment within the tank was safe to enter. Adequate fire protection in confined spaces is essential, particularly when flammable materials may be present. OSHA requires employers to take specific steps to eliminate fire hazards in such spaces, including purging, inerting, flushing, or ventilating, yet none of these were implemented. Nor did they provide continuous atmospheric monitoring to detect any dangerous changes in air quality. Furthermore, OSHA mandates that employers must use constant monitoring equipment when workers enter confined spaces with flammable substances, but the employer neglected this requirement as well. In addition, OSHA found that the employer had failed to ensure that a suitable mechanical device was in place for emergency retrieval in the event of a fire. Instead, the company relied on a synthetic rope, which is prohibited in potentially high-temperature environments because it may burn or fail under heat. Compounding these failures, the supervisor allowed the entry without verifying that all permit requirements for confined space entry had been met. This case illustrates the dangers of failing to adhere to OSHA's fire protection and confined space regulations, underscoring the importance of ventilation, monitoring, and emergency preparedness. On July 19 at 7:15 a.m., a routine operation at a manufacturing facility turned catastrophic. 3 employees were tasked with replacing an empty 55-gallon drum of paint reducer with a full one. As they moved the pump equipment from the empty drum to the new one, an unknown ignition source set off a flash fire, rapidly followed by an explosion fueled by the flammable vapors. The incident resulted in the hospitalization of 5 employees, severe burns for 3 of them, and the tragic loss of 2 lives. OSHA's investigation revealed that the employer's disregard for essential fire protection measures in handling flammable liquids contributed significantly to the accident. First, the facility stored nearly 550 gallons of Category 2, 3, and 4 flammable liquids, more than 4 times the legally permitted amount of 120 gallons. Proper storage limits on flammable materials reduced the risk of life-threatening fires. By exceeding them, the employer had set the stage for a disaster. Adding to the hazard, containers holding these flammable liquids were left open while workers performed other operations, allowing vapors to escape into the workspace. Compounding this issue, the employer failed to ensure that workers used non-sparking tools for removing and installing bungs and siphon connections on the barrels, a crucial precaution to prevent accidental ignition. OSHA also found that workers used polyurethane reducer for pump cleaning without bonding or grounding the equipment, a necessary step to avoid static buildup, which was a likely cause of this fire and subsequent explosion. Additionally, employees had not been trained in critical safety procedures for grounding and bonding or handling flammable liquids, leaving them unprepared for these dangers. This case illustrates the severe consequences of overlooking OSHA's fire protection requirements, particularly when handling flammable substances. Adhering to storage limits, using proper tools, and providing thorough safety training are essential steps to prevent such tragic incidents.